You didn't even realize how you ended up in the bathroom. Your hands were trembling as you turned the water on. The cold stream hit your skin like tiny needles. Your heart was racing, and the sound of the rushing water mixing with the pounding in your head. Your clothes were already half off and breath shallow as you slid into the bathtub. The water was cold. You wanted it to be cold. You wanted to feel something other than the lingering sensation of his hands on you. Your professor's hands. You squeezed your eyes shut to erase everything, but the memory forced itself back, his hands sliding down your back when you reached for your notebook, the way he leaned in too close, his breath too hot against your neck as he murmured something you couldn't even process. The moment his hand drifted lower, when you shoved him back so hard his chair toppled over, that disgusting smirk on his face as he stood up like it was nothing. You had screamed at him, pushed him harder, told him you would report him. He had laughed, said no one would believe you, said you were overreacting, said you were lucky it was him and not someone else. Your hands curled into fists under the water, your nails dug into your palms as you rubbed your skin raw, scrubbing your arms and shoulders where he touched you, but it wouldn't go away. The feeling of him lingered, making your skin crawl. The water turned pink, you had rubbed too hard, your skin was breaking, you didn't care, you scrubbed harder, your breath hitched as tears slid down your cheeks, your throat was tired and chest aching. You tried to rub off every feeling of his touch and soon your body exhausted and you fainted right there in the bathtub, letting your body drown in it. Jungkook stepped into the apartment, completely exhausted from the long day at work. He tossed his keys onto the table with a soft clink and sank onto the couch, letting his head fall back against the cushions. His eyes slipped shut for a moment as the house was strangely too quiet. His brows furrowed as he sat up, glancing at the clock. You should have been home by now. Did she have extra classes? His gaze drifted towards the staircase and that's when he saw it. Your school bag sitting there halfway up the stairs. His chest tightened. You never left your bag anywhere but your desk, ever. Wyan, he called your name, already standing up and making his way towards the kitchen. A knot formed in his stomach when he didn't find you there. Wyan, still nothing. His feet moved faster as he climbed the stairs. The bedroom was empty, office nothing. The knot in his chest tightened as he glanced over the bathroom door. That's when he heard it. The faint sound of running water. Jungkook's heart started racing. His hand pushed the door open and his breath caught, witnessing the sight of you in front of him. You were in the tub. Head slumped to the side, water dangerously close to covering your face, arms floating limply at your sides, your skin turned completely pale. Shh, Wyan. He was on his knees in a flash, plugging his hands into the cold water as he pulled you out. Wake up. His hand cradled your face, his thumb brushing against your damp cheek. Come on, breathe. A weak cough left your lips as water spilled from your mouth. Your eyes fluttered open, glazed and unfocused. Oh my god. Jungkook breathed, tear instantly welling in his eyes as he pulled you closer. His arms were trembling and he looked visibly terrified. You coughed weakly as your body was still trembling. Jungkook, I'm here. You're safe. His hand brushed wet strands of hair away from your face as he pressed frantic kisses against your temple. His breath was uneven. I've got you. I've got you. Your shaky hand gripped his shirt as you blinked up at him, disoriented. What happened? His voice was soft now, his hand sliding down to cup your cheek. His thumb brushed over your damp skin, eyes full of quiet panic. You blinked as tears slipped down your cheeks as you looked at him confused. Jungkook, what happened? Your voice cracked. That's what I'm asking. You fainted in the bathtub. Baby, what were you? Your eyes widened as it hit you all over again. Your throat closed up, breath hitching painfully. I couldn't. Your lips trembled. I couldn't get it off, Jungkook. His brows pulled tighter. Get what off? You shook your head, choked on a sob. Your hands clutched his shirt desperately as tears ran down your face. His touch. I kept scrubbing, but it wouldn't go away. I couldn't get it off. Jungkook's entire body stiffened beneath you. His arms tightened around you, jaw locked. But his eyes never left yours. Whose touch? His voice was dangerously quiet. Tears blurred your vision as you whispered, My professor. The shift in Jungkook was immediate. His eyes darkened, his whole body going rigid. His hand slid behind your head, his thumb brushing over your temple in a soothing motion even as his jaw tightened dangerously. What did he do? His voice was calm, too calm. You broke down, sobs racking your body as you curled against his chest. Jungkook held you through it, his hand rubbing circles into your back even though you could feel the tension in his muscles. He touched me. You whispered through broken breaths. I pushed him away. I told him I would report him, but he just laughed. He said no one would believe me. Jungkook's chest rose sharply beneath you, but he kept his hand still down your back. What's his name? And why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you call me at that moment? Tears welled up in your eyes as your lips trembled. I didn't know he would go that far. I thought I could handle him. His face hardened, his hand slid to the back of your head. Handled it. You looked down. I didn't want to bother you. Bother me? He put his hands on you. He violated you. And you thought you would be bothering me? His tone was cutting, but his hand on your back was steady and soft. You don't handle things like this alone. Not when you have me. Tears slipped down your cheeks. I didn't know what to do. Jungkook pulled you closer, his hand wrapping around the back of your neck. His lips brushed against your forehead, lingering there as his breath shook. You are not going back there, he said quietly. He got suspended already. I did what I was able to do. Jungkook's jaw tensed. You are strong, love. I'm proud of you, but now it's my turn. Your breath hitched. What are you going to do? His gaze darkened further. His jaw flexed as his hand tightened at your waist. Make him pay. He touched you. He thought he could get away with it. His eyes darkened with a quiet fury that made your heart race. He's going to learn he picked the wrong person. He leaned in, his lips brushing over your damp hair, his arms wrapped around you, holding you close even as his body tensed. Let's go, get you changed. You're safe, I'm here. His hand cradled your head as his lips pressed against your temple. You could feel the tension radiating off him, his breath sharp, his body rigid beneath you. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. I'm going to make sure he never touches you or anyone else ever again. You walked through the school gates, the usual morning chatter from other students buzzing around you. Last day wasn't easy, but Jungkook, he stayed by your side, comforted you in his warm embrace and made sure you knew how much he loved you and you didn't have to handle everything on your own, even though you think you can. You knew you won't find Professor Kim at school because, as the principal said, he'll be suspended. You thought Jungkook had left for work. He kissed you on the forehead that morning before he left, or so you thought, but as you turned the corner towards the administration's office, the side before you made your breath hitch. Jungkook was standing in the middle of the hallway. He was dressed in all black fitted trousers, a sleek jacket, and a deadly calm expression on his face. His hands were in his pockets, shoulders squared as if he owned the place. His gaze was razor sharp, focused entirely on the man standing a few feet away from him, Professor Kim. Your breath stilled. A few students had already gathered around, their whispers growing louder. Wait, isn't that Professor Kim? Why is he standing there like that? Oh my god, isn't that Ryan's husband? Your heart raced as you hurried forward. Jungkook. His head snapped towards you the moment he heard your voice, and his eyes softened slightly when they landed on you, but the tension in his jaw didn't ease. He turned back towards Professor Kim, stepping closer. I asked you a question. Jungkook's voice was calm, but it was the kind of calm that made everyone stop breathing. The principal was trying to handle the situation, but he didn't dare in front of Jungkook. Do you deny it? Mr. John, we can handle this matter privately. He went quiet the moment Jungkook glared at him. Professor Kim's face paled. His gaze flickered nervously between Jungkook and the school's principal, who stood nearby looking completely horrified. I already said it's not true, Professor Kim stammered. You don't. Jungkook's eyes narrowed, his hands slipped out of his pockets, fingers curling at his sides, his voice lowered dangerously. Should I remind you then? The students exchanged glances, unaware of what was happening. Actually, the matter yesterday was sorted out privately by the principal. He suspended Professor Kim and promised you that it will never happen again, but Jungkook wasn't going to settle for this much. Professor Kim stepped back. This is a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Jungkook let out a bitter laugh. He turned towards the principal. This man put his hand on my wife. He touched her without her consent. In this very building. The principal's eyes lowered in shame, while the students' eyes widened in horror. Murmurs exploded from the growing crowd. Wait, what? He touched Ryan? Holy no. Professor Kim's face flushed. He stepped back, eyes darting around the room. There's no proof of that. This is outrageous. You think there's no proof? Jungkook's gaze sharpened dangerously. He pulled out his phone, holding it up. Because there are security cameras in the hallway. Every single one of them caught you. Professor Kim's face went ghost white. I already have the footage. It's been submitted to the police. They'll be here soon. The principal stiffened. Mr. John, please. I don't care if this school wants to protect its staff. Jungkook's tone was razor sharp. This is SA. He took a step towards Professor Kim, who flinched. And you think you can get away with it? Professor Kim swallowed hard. His eyes darted towards the exit, but Jungkook's gaze pinned him in place. You really thought no one would believe her? You thought you could scare her into silence? Professor Kim's mouth opened and closed helplessly. I will make sure you are stripped of your job, and after that you'll face the law. The tension in the hallway was suffocating. Students watched with wide eyes, some clutching their phones, already recording. You finally felt like the justice was served. Your husband took a stand for you the way you never expected. I made a mistake. Jungkook's jaw flexed, his gaze sharpened. A mistake? Touching my wife wasn't a mistake. That was a crime and you'll get punished. Professor Kim's knees buckled. He turned towards the principal, looking desperate. Sir. The principal's face hardened. Professor Kim, I'm feeling ashamed now for not taking proper action. I think I made a good decision by suspending you. Oh, correction. He's not suspended. Jungkook's gaze darkened. He's fired. The principal's gaze shifted towards Jungkook. Mr. John, we have procedures to follow. Jungkook's gaze sharpened. You can either follow my lead or wait until the police get here. Your choice. The principal's mouth opened, but before he could respond, Jungkook's gaze flickered towards the hallway. Two police officers were already approaching. Professor Kim's face drained of color. No, please. Jungkook stepped aside as the officers approached. Take him. Mr. Kim, you are under arrest for S. misconduct and A. You have the right to remain silent. Professor Kim's eyes widened. No, this is a misunderstanding. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. You can explain that in court. Your eyes teared up. Your friends who were standing near you tried to console you. Are you okay, Ryan? You nodded. Don't worry, everything will be fine. You have got a good husband. The officers pulled Professor Kim's hands behind his back, snapping the cuffs in place. He struggled, but the officers held him firm. Students gasped. Phones were held up, recording everything. As the officers dragged him away, Jungkook's gaze stayed cold and steady. When Professor Kim's eyes met his, Jungkook smiled. Faintly, a dangerous smile. Don't ever think you can walk away from this. I'll make sure you suffer your whole life. Professor Kim's mouth opened, but Jungkook turned away before he could speak. Your breath was shaky. You stood there still processing everything when Jungkook's gaze finally softened. His hand slid to your waist as he pulled you into his chest. You leaned into his chest, feeling the warmth of his body and the steadiness of his heartbeat. His arms tightened around you protectively. You are safe now, he whispered into your hair, and he's never going to touch you again. Thank you so much. A few feet away, the principal stood frozen, eyes wide. Jungkook's gaze flicked towards him. You let that man stay here. You allowed this to happen under your watch. You tried to settle this matter without any punishment. I expect you to take the accountability. The principal swallowed hard as his eyes lowered in shame. I'm sorry, Mr. John, and I promise this will never happen again. Not to Ryan or any other student. Jungkook's gaze darkened. Good. He turned back towards you, his hand resting on the back of your head as he kissed your hair. Let's go home. This is over. And as he led you out of the building, his arms around your waist, you felt the weight of it all finally begin to lift. In the end, he made sure the man who dared to touch you won't walk freely without consequences.